Hey guys, as you can see from the last video, I got the Kenwood DMX906S and I finally got it installed into the Jeep. Reason I went with this particular model was because it supported wireless CarPlay and also because it had HD radio, which is something I wanted. I was looking into the DMX706S, but this one came out first. The difference between that one and this one is this one has the wireless CarPlay and some other widget functions and the HD radio. The 706 does not have the HD radio or wireless CarPlay. It does have wired CarPlay, and it's also a short bin radio. I would recommend that one over this one if you do not want to modify some of the dash components, which I'll go over later. So this radio is a double DIN radio and it is full length. Now about the parking dynamic guidelines, I only know two solutions for that. One of them being the Kenwood radios with the iData Link Maestro steering wheel interface. And the other solution is using the Alpine SGS CH01, which that's a standalone interface that costs like $300. So those are the only two options I'm aware of. If anybody knows of any, just leave it in the comments below. So for the installation, I apologize, I did get video, but unfortunately it was raining, very dark here, and I had to do everything in the garage, and I don't really have a really good light source in the garage. Therefore, all the video I took was very dark, so this is going to be just more of an overview. But basically, I followed the Alpine i207 install video that you can find on YouTube with some mods, and I'll link on the description the link to that video below, so if you want to check that out. But basically, it's taking off the dash, taking out the old radio, and installing this radio with the Maestro RR. So basically I started out with disconnecting the battery, removing the dash like I just said. I did have to trim the upper support bar that's right behind here to fit this radio. Basically just cut a little bit off the bottom to make this fit. I did not cut it, just trimmed it a little bit so that the radio could fit. I actually did that with the install for the Alpine ILX W650 that I got before this. I just wasn't happy with that radio, so I sent it back, but it still holds true that you're going to have to trim back there. It's very soft rubber, so all you need is like a pocket knife, and what I used is there's a part that goes, the last part that goes straight down, and there's a flat part that goes out and then down. I use that flat part as a guide to cut. So in order for me to retain the upper retaining screw, I had to modify the factory radio support bracket or back support bracket. Basically, I had to cut the tabs off the top where it met with the radio, and I had to completely cut out the bottom of that bracket in order for this radio to fit into the dash and still retain that screw up here. For the GPS antenna, I actually have it up here. I haven't glued it down yet, but I'm thinking of leaving it right there, just testing it out for now. Making sure everything works before I peel off that sticker and glue it down. And then the microphone I just installed right here, which the cable for that, once again, I followed the i207 video, went through there and back to the radio. The USB cable, once again, if you look at that i207 video, very clear on that video, but you do need a USB mini to USB-A cable. The cable that was behind here on the radio itself, I hooked up the black one because that's the one for the CarPlay for this radio, was able to go to that extension cable. I'll link a link to that particular USB cable that I used below. I ran the other USB cable to the glove box so I can have a USB stick in there with music. Alright, so let's go over some of the radio functions. Now there are way too many functions to go over, so what I'll do is I'll link the manual on in the description of this video. That way you can go into it yourself and see everything that it has, because there's just way too many. So let me start out with two things that I kind of find annoying. So the first thing I found annoying is that when programming the iDataLink Maestro RR, there wasn't an option to program one of the buttons to preset up, preset down. So on my steering wheel, I have 3 sets of buttons on the back of each side. So this side, I believe I have volume up, volume down, and mute. And on this side, I have search up, search down, and source. So what happens is, like for example, I'm on this radio station, 96.1, goes up, it's basically just searching for the next radio station. What I would like to have an option for is it to change to my next preset, because I know what I like and I don't need to be searching all the time. I rather those 2 buttons be dedicated to preset up and preset down. Now, I didn't see an option for it. Maybe they are calling it something differently in the drop down box with all the options, but I couldn't see, or I couldn't tell which one of those was particularly for that. The other thing I found annoying was that the source button goes through all the sources even if you don't have that source available. For example, I don't have SiriusXM and I don't use mirroring. So I would love to be able to get rid of those from a setup menu somewhere, saying that do not use those as a source, basically. But those are the only 2 things that really annoyed me. All right, so let's go through some of the buttons here on the front. First, we have obviously volume up, volume down. We have ATT, which is basically just mute. We have home, which takes you to this home screen. And there are multiple home screens that you can choose. This car supports widgets, I should say. So I just have it in the multi-widget section here. Menu brings down the pop-down menu, this is the only place I could find the screen backlight. FYI, it's not on the other setup menu, but you have some different things, like you can choose the camera, the setup, which we'll go into a little bit, the audio setup, which once again you can access through the setup, and CarPlay. This button basically goes in between your Apple CarPlay, or if you have Android Auto, and the home screen. And you can reach the cam from here as well. Those are the buttons in the front. Now these buttons, the touchscreen buttons here, are all customizable, but HD radio for your HD radio, Apple CarPlay for your Apple CarPlay, gauges, which is hooked up through the ODB2. You can change these in the settings. And I have USB, because I have some USB stick with some music. This button over here gets you to all your sources. Wireless mirroring I don't use because I don't have an Android. Once again, vehicle info, it just gives you some basic info if your doors are open. You your battery, any check engine lights. Kind of neat, I guess. Go back. Nope. Standby is just that, standby. Spotify and Pandora. They do play once you have CarPlay connected, but I just used the CarPlay app, so it's really redundant. Audio is basically the audio setup. We'll get back into that in a little bit. Telephone, I think that's if you have it hooked up with USB. Once again, I'm using Apple CarPlay, kind of redundant. AVN is that little pigtail that came with the radio. I'm not using that. iPod is iPod mode. Once again, I'm just going to be using Apple CarPlay, Bluetooth as well. Sirius XM is that if you have the Sirius module, you can hook it up to here and pay for satellite radio. I don't have no idea what satellite radio is because they're Sirius XM. I thought that was the only satellite radio, but there might be others in the world, I guess. Media player, I'm not sure, it's not highlighted for me. I think it's specific for if your car has a media player. Bluetooth streaming, once again, I don't use that. Radar detector, Android Auto, I don't use those options. And then climate and parking assist, that's if your car supports it, and this vehicle doesn't because it has analog air conditioning controls. All right, setting, you can go either through that way, or if you're home, menu, setup. AV setup, it's your CarPlay devices, your speech quality, that's your, I believe, mic levels, echo, cancel, and noise reduction. AV out, it's off for me. Wi-Fi setup, basically Wi-Fi for the radio itself. I think it's required for Apple CarPlay. And OEM setup, and this is where you can change some of those gauges. On your vehicle settings, you can select which gauge you want. I'll have to play with that as well. I haven't played with any of this information yet. And go back, and then I'm kind of staying away from this one. It's where you can reset your Maestro and your audio levels from it. So I stay away from that. All right, you got display. I got the dimmer hooked up, so that orange and white cable, I believe, is connected to the cable harness. So when I turn on the lights, it dims. Key color, that's just the color of your keys. Let's you select that. Wallpaper customization. I have the widget off for the, I guess you can put pictures on your USB drive. I have that off. I just have it synced to artwork. So basically the color of the screen reflects on whatever's playing on the radio or your CarPlay. Viewing angle, you can change the different types of viewing angle. I find that -3 works for the Jeep. Screen effects is on. Well, turned it on. That's it there. All right. Next we got cameras. This is where you set your rear camera interrupt, which I had to turn on. So when you go into reverse, let's see if I can do that. Oh, I have to. It gives me the lines. And your parking guidelines setup. These are dynamic. They do work. And I don't have a front camera. Special, the only thing really here is the initialization, which is resets the radio back to factory. And then we have some Bluetooth controls, or the Bluetooth connections to the radio. In audio, there's a lot here. You have your crossover. You tell it what speakers you have, what type of car you have. I have it set to wagon. I guess a Jeep is kind of a wagon. That's the closest thing there. Maybe they, once again, Kenwood, get a profile for Jeep, because we do have a sound bar and it does sound differently. So I do have, it does let me choose what speakers for the front and what speakers on the back. Lets you choose the location it's on. I should put it on dash for the front and upper cargo area for the back. I do not have subwoofers. All right, EQ is just that. EQ, you have lots of different options there, and you can save a couple of profiles. If you had a subwoofer, you have some subwoofer levels there as well. This EQ is by source, so you can, once you have some, you can select sync all source or have it individually depending on your source. So CarPlay and HD radio can have their own different EQ settings. Positioning data is that. Once again, I believe this was on last year's model. You can change adjust the timing. So if you want to just have it front driver, you can. I have it on off right now, but you can go ahead and also measure the different, I guess, measure from your ears to each speaker and set it up. So that's that. It's basically timing adjustment. Fader, it's pretty much what it is, a fader. Volume offset, there's different, if your HD radio and your USB or your iPod, anything has a different level, you can increase it or decrease it here. The only thing I don't see here is Apple CarPlay, and I did find that my phone was a little low on CarPlay, and I'm still trying to figure that out. Maybe it's just me, but I'm still wondering. I'm wondering if it's under app and iPod. But this is where you would adjust the volumes for those different sources if one was louder than the other. Zone control. This is where if you have like a minivan or something and you have displays on the back, or you want different radio station or a different source on the back, you can do that, but I don't have that, so I don't even know how to use it. Sound effects, this is where your bass boost is at, your loudness, which loudness has a little bit more bass, especially with these 6.5s. This is what I found that replicated the bass that came out of the factory radio. The factory radio actually had some pretty good sound and bass, but this right here got it to about that same level. This is supposed to take off some road noise. I'm not sure really how, but makes it a little louder from what I can hear from my ear. And then we have audio memory, so we can set up all that memory. That way you can recall it if the battery dies. All right, really that's about it. The conclusion is I love the wireless CarPlay. I didn't think I was gonna like it that much compared to wired, but once I started using it, my phone never really came out of my pocket, so you didn't have to take your phone out, plug it in, or if you forgot to plug it in or take it out of your pocket while you started driving, you don't have to, you know, struggle trying to get the phone out of your pocket. That's really cool. Really like the dynamic guidelines. That's really awesome. And pretty much I love the sound of the radio, so it definitely looks good. It looks factory. One thing to mention, I had to use the short nose ears to bring the radio out more. Using the Maestro, not Maestro, I forgot the kit I'm using, but the kit I'm using had two different ears. It had one for long nose, which this is a long nose, and one for short ear. The short ear basically allows you to bring the radio all the way up. So that's what I'm using here, and that's why you see such a wide gap. On the other ones, they're actually wider, but unfortunately, it didn't pop the radio out enough for me. That's really it, guys. So if you have any questions, leave them below. I'm happy with the install. Like I said, it looks pretty much factory. Doesn't look bad at all, and I'm happy with the sound. The only thing I wish they would have done is basically added an HD screen. So, all right, comment below if you have any comments. You guys have a good one.